So before we get started, I just want to say that if you work in the private security sector, okay, whether you have a partner or you don't have a partner that you work with, never utter the phrase, man, it's been a smooth shift. If you say those words, that little box that's in the movie Hellraiser that starts to open up and all the crazy, like, symbiotes or whatever they're called come out, that's exactly what happens every single time. I'm working with my man Brian tonight. We had a very smooth shift. Everything was smooth sailing, really no issues, no problems, just the normal run of the mill shift. And right as we're locking the doors, he says to me, man, it has been such a smooth shift. And wouldn't you know it, we have a shoplifter that's leaving and like everything goes south. Nothing major, but like just enough to warrant a call to the police and a whole bunch of other stuff. And every single time without fail, right? So never say the words, man, this is a smooth shift, or wow, it's been easy today, or I can't believe like how smooth everything is gone. The second you say that, you are guaranteed to open the gates of hell and something is going to happen. So that being said, I'm done with my shift and now it's time to come on here and do some teaching. So today we're going to talk about a really a really good topic, one that's come up more or less, like I'd say maybe 5 or 6 different times by different people. And the topic is military experience a positive or a negative for private security? Now, before we go any further, let me just say I am a 6-year Air Force disabled veteran. I absolutely love this country. I have nothing but the highest level of respect and honor for anyone who puts on the boots and wears the uniform of the United States military. Nothing but respect. So when we're talking about being in the military or having military experience and how that relates to private security, there's absolutely zero disrespect. So today I'm going to give you guys my top 3 positives that being in the military brings to private security. And I'm going to also balance that out with my top 3 negative things that I've seen, right? It's not a negative on the military per se, but negative aspects that can kind of filter into private security with people who have military experience. Now, if you're new here, this is a private security channel. We pride ourselves on educating, motivating, training, and informing up and coming security guards and any security guard that wants to come here and share knowledge and learn. Let me repeat that, share knowledge. The important part of sharing knowledge is that if you guys have something that you'd like to add to this conversation or this discussion, put it in the comments, because when people come back and read this, next week or 2 years from now, you might offer something that I missed, and it's very important that we help each other out. So, what are some of the positives? I'm going to say the most important thing that people gain from being in the military, that they bring over to the private security sector, is that they generally have a strong work ethic. If you've served any time in the military and you haven't gotten an Article 15 and gotten yourself kicked out, you don't have any other option than to develop a strong work ethic, because when you're in the military, it's bred into you. Like, it's literally a part of your everyday existence. From the time you get to boot camp to the time that you take your last steps on your base and you exit out of the military, your work ethic is something that not only follows you everywhere you go, it precedes you. You are always working towards something that's bigger than yourself. You're working for the greater good, the greater collective. You're sacrificing yourself in very many ways. So people that have served time in the military already have an understanding of work ethic, sacrificing for themselves, or sacrificing themselves for the greater good. And all of that is something that is sorely missing in the private security space. We deal with people that are constantly calling off for all kinds of just ridiculous, simple reasons, right? People that, don't want to miss the new movie that comes out, or, the football game, all kinds of things, right? So having people that understand that you have to sometimes sacrifice for the betterment of the collective is something that is great that people bring into the private security sector. Veterans tend to have this in spades, and that's an amazing thing. The second thing would be that they generally understand and follow orders. Again, something that is developed and bred into you from day one. You understand the chain of command. You understand how to follow orders. You understand working on timelines. You understand working up against stressful situations. Understanding how to follow orders is probably the biggest thing that's missing in today's society. I don't have to even get into like teenagers and young adults. No one wants to follow any sort of direction. No one wants to follow any sort of structure or chain of command. And when you're working in private security, everything that you do is chain of command. You have the chain of command within your own company, right? Your supervisor, your upline management, all the way to the owner or the CEO of the company. And understanding how to navigate that, how to talk to people with respect, how to respect people's positions. If you can't do that in the private security field, you're not going to make it. You're just not going to make it. Aside from that, when you're working for clients, this is something that more often than not causes a lot of problems for individual security guards and then ultimately for the company themselves. If you can't understand how to interact with your associates at a store, your low-level managers, your mid-level managers, understanding how to talk to CEOs potentially of the location where you're working and servicing that contract, very, very, very difficult and causes a lot of problems. More than anything else, working in retail security, what I have seen cause more problems for individual security guards and for the companies that I've been working for at the time is security guards not understanding the chain of command and how to follow orders. Very, very important. 1 second. It's been a very long day and I am extremely thirsty. What would be the next one? So we got work ethic, we've got the command structure, and we've got the following of orders, right? Let me check my notes here. I think I did all three of those. Let me make sure. So the first one was that they've already understand the command structure, right? We talked about developing a work ethic and then following orders. So I think we talked about those three positive. What are going to be the negatives? All right, this is really important. The number one negative is going to be that most veterans, especially my fellow veterans from the Army and from the Marines. I'm an Air Force guy, all right? No shame in my game. My Army and my Marine guys, they tend to be more reactionary as opposed to critical thinking. Don't shoot the messenger, okay? Just giving you my opinion. Army and Marines tend to be more reactionary as opposed to critical thinking. Why is that? If you're 11 Bravo, you're, infantry, you're boots on the ground, you're the guy with the gun. Your entire existence is literally reacting to what someone is telling you, right? Your existence is reacting to things that you see, to things that you hear, to environments that you're in, right? You don't have a lot of opportunity, depending on your rank and depending on the location where you're serving, you don't have a lot of opportunity to make a lot of decisions, especially if you're junior enlisted, right? Once you get to that non-commissioned officer status, definitely if you're an officer, we're talking about something a little bit different. If you're rank and file junior enlisted, everything about your existence is already set for you. You don't get to make a lot of decisions. You are following orders, you're moving, you're reacting to things that are happening around you at the moment that they're happening. That's all well and good when you're on the battlefield. But where I've seen this become a problem is that when you're working in private security, especially if you're working in an environment like this, where you're wearing a lot of the same kit, you're carrying a firearm, you're dealing with people that are potentially aggressive or dangerous or dealing in nefarious activities, right? If you've spent time overseas, if you've spent time in theater, and you're used to reacting and responding, you're used to kicking in doors, you're used to dealing with people in an aggressive manner. And listen, all power to you. Like what you've done and what you've seen and what you've been a part of, we thank you for that, and we need that, and we've needed that, right? There's no disrespect in what you've been a part of, but that's not what you're doing in private security here on American soil. And a lot of times that mentality can carry over. It can carry over a lot of times when you're working in law enforcement. And for those guys who, for whatever reason, don't go into law enforcement and filter into private security, it can filter into private security. So that lack of the ability to slow down and critically think about what's the best decision to make in that moment sometimes isn't there. And you see private security guards with the history of the military where they are more reactionary, and they tend to react in a way that can sometimes, let me say this again, let me be very clear here, sometimes can be more aggressive than it needs to be. And that can be bad in terms of the company and working in this environment. Okay. The next thing kind of piggybacks off of that, and that's people that have PTSD. So all respect for anyone who suffers from PTSD. I think that I potentially have a little PTSD from some things that I experienced in the military. Definitely from some of the things that I've seen working here in Portland. But guys who have been through some very traumatic experiences that are way beyond anything that I've ever seen or ever done, those guys can also easily become triggered working in a private security setting. Our job a lot of times calls for us to not do anything. Think about that. Our job sometimes is mandated to us to not do anything. To not do anything when you see injustice like theft or arson or, assault. I mean, it can be anything. Depending on where you're working and depending on what you're doing, your job might be strictly to observe and report. And in that same situation, what else do we deal with on a daily basis? No matter where you work as a private security guard, you guys are going to all resonate with what I'm going to say. What do we deal with on a daily basis? Daily disrespect. Microaggressions from a manager who's 18, 19, 20 years old. Karens and Kens talking to you any kind of way. Drug addicts and homeless people threatening you. You put a person who's got 2 combat tours in that situation, who's really seen some things, who's really been through it, who's lost people that he cares about, people that he loves, and he's doing everything he can to just keep pushing forward. And you put that person in an environment where every day people are just poke, 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 poking the bear. What can happen? Well, I'll tell you what can happen. We've talked on this channel before about the private security guard who found himself in a situation at a Lowe's parking lot just a couple years ago. I've told this story many times. The private security guard is working. A known thief comes in, allegedly, and steals $6 to $9 worth of wooden pallets. Security guard follows him out into the parking lot. An argument ensues. The subject gets into his vehicle, turns on the ignition, revs the engine a couple of times. A couple of different things happen. It's not really that important. The ultimate finality of this situation is that this private security provider stands in front of the truck and levies 6 to 9 shots into the front of this vehicle. And he kills this subject. He kills this guy over $9 worth of wooden pallets. And it turns out that this guy was a combat veteran. And it's never been lost on me that how this guy responded to this situation, and I say this with all respect, how this guy responded to this situation, the way that he talks to the subject while he's in the car, the frustration, the anger, basically the snapping that you see on video. There's no way that you can't tell me that this guy wasn't traumatized from what he experienced overseas. And when you put a private security, when you put a person in that shape or in that mentality into the position of working private security, where they are constantly ridiculed, where they are constantly disrespected, where they are constantly chastised, they're constantly pushed and pressed. A very, very, very small push can send somebody over the edge. And we've seen that time and time again. So the potential of people suffering from and dealing with PTSD is something that is very, very, very negative in terms of what can happen. I don't blame the security guard. I don't blame the veteran for that. But if you're carrying that and you're carrying that weight and you bring that into this industry, it is a very, very easy situation for you to find yourself in where you're snapping, right? The last is going to be that your past military experiences, depending on who you are and what you went through, can make you a little rebellious. I went into the military at 17 years old. I was 17. I didn't have the best situation at home. I didn't have the best home life. I didn't have a bad home life, but I didn't have the best home life, right? And so I went into the military in search of a family. I wanted to connect and belong and be a part of something bigger than myself. And when I got to the military, I realized that it's no different than any other job, right? There's still politics. You still deal with bullshit. You still deal with little cliques and things like that. And so I ended up leaving way earlier looking back than I wish that I should have. Like, I wish that I would have stayed in for 20 years and retired from the military. I got out after my 6 years. I was so jaded and frustrated. And since I had spent that 6 years in the military and it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, since the people that were there who were over me and supposed to be so wise and so, you know, just the people that I was looking to be leaders, right? I didn't feel like I got anything out of that. And so once I got out of the military, I was rebellious. And I've seen that with a lot of people. It's like if you don't have the success in the military, if you don't build that camaraderie, you don't have that family, you don't stay in long enough to get through that bottleneck of your first couple of years, when you get out, sometimes you're like, you know what? I've been in a position, I've been in a place where these people have had their thumb on me. They've been telling me what to do, telling me what to eat, where to go, when to go there, right? I'm going to do my own thing. And so if you have someone that comes into the private security industry that's rebellious because they didn't find what they wanted in the military, that can cause problems too. How does that manifest? It manifests itself in a lot of different ways. It manifests itself in people that can't be happy or don't have internal happiness. They're not reliable. You have security guards that go to one company, they don't find what they're looking for, they leave and go to another. They go to that company, it's not what it's supposed to be, they leave and go somewhere else. And most often when people bounce around from company to company, after a while, you start seeing these people pull one or two or three or four other officers with them. On a long enough timeline, most of these people ultimately end up starting their own company. And they end up siphoning and pulling and grabbing officers from the company that they just came from. Now, if you're the officer, good for you, right? Like, you get to move on and bring some of your friends, maybe start your own company. But if you're the owner, if you're the supervisor, if you're the owner, you're the person that has put their house on the line so that you can start this business, it's not good for you to have people come in, undercut you, steal your employees, steal your ideas, steal your customers, right? It's a huge negative. So let me go over these three things, okay? The positives, and it's important that we point out the positives. Generally, they respect and understand the command structure, right? Typically, they've already developed, or it's already been developed for them, a that is good for the private security industry, right? Generally, they understand and follow orders. And for us, that's going to be post orders, right? What are the negatives? That they can sometimes be more reactionary versus critical thinking. Sometimes they can harbor and be dealing with PTSD. And then past experience of military, if it's not been positive, can lead to them being somewhat rebellious. And that can lead to officers being unreliable, bouncing from company to company, and sometimes pulling other employees with them, or ultimately starting their own company and undercutting or going after your customers. Now, what I want to know is, what are your thoughts? Do you think that being a military veteran, serving in the military, do you think that that is something that's necessary to work in private security? Do you think that it's a positive, or do you think that sometimes it can be a negative? And again, we're only talking about this as related to the private security field. There's nothing negative about serving in the military. We honor and respect our veterans. There's no shots or shade being thrown here. So let me go through some of these comments real quick, see if there is anything in here that I need to address. Cole Soft says, I left the Marines and went right into an unarmed position at a ski resort. I was always working to my best potential, but always getting into some type of trouble for doing too much. What did I say? I appreciate you being honest, man. That is awesome. Thank you. Thank you. That is a great comment. And yeah, that's something that you see a lot, especially if you've been deployed, or even if you were in the military and you were just busy, right? If you have things to do and you're involved, when you get into private security, 99.9% of our job is just standing around and waiting, right? Even if you're on a patrol, there's not a lot that we find ourselves doing or getting into. So if you're used to being busy, especially if you've been deployed and you were kicking in doors, you come into the private security sector and you're just twiddling your thumbs. And then the smallest thing can turn into a situation where you're doing too much. I totally agree with that. Let's see here. Colsoft, he kind of piggybacks on his first statement, and he says, not in a legal or non-contractual sense. I was always walking around being too visible. I got wrote up for wearing concealable body armor under my uniform because of it. Listen, none of us are going to give you a hard time for wearing body armor, okay? I would much rather get written up for having body armor on than to get shot or stabbed and not have it on. So nobody's going to give you a hard time for that, okay? DC Long, where's your first comment? Eddie says, hello, sir. Eddie says, how old are you? Guys, I am 46 years old. I'm almost 50. Let's see here. Wow, let's see here. Not AJ says, hi from Poland. Hello. The worst security guards are okay. Alex Calderon says the worst security guards are the most aggressive ones. A lot of guards don't know how to de-escalate the situation. Let me think about that for a second. You're right, but let me think about my answer to that. Guards don't know how to de-escalate because de-escalation is a skill. Everyone thinks that de-escalation is just something that you naturally understand and can apply. Even if you understand what de-escalation is, how do you put it into practice? And guys, look, perfect example. Before I came down here, I had someone losing their literal shit. I had to call 911. I had 911 on speakerphone. This person is like 6'4", literally leather jacket with spikes sticking everywhere, half their head shaved, completely high out of their head, right? Foam on each side of their mouth, and they're screaming at me like just going crazy. How do you train someone to de-escalate that? How do you de-escalate someone that is doing this? literally what we deal with on a daily basis. How do you teach someone how to de-escalate that? Most people, definitely the people who watch my videos and comment top flight security or comment day or comment mall cop, you would not survive 30 seconds. The second that someone starts doing that, two things are going to happen. Three things. Number one, you're going to just be like, the fuck is going on? Because none of it makes any logical sense. You have to remember, when people are high, when people are drunk, when people are dealing with mental illness, they're not rational. De-escalation means you're getting someone to take it down a notch. How do you get someone to take it down a notch when they don't realize what notches are? You guys who don't respect what we do, you have zero idea what we deal with. Most of you would literally just freeze. Some of you would think that this is an invitation to be equally as aggressive. Someone bows up, someone starts talking shit, they start getting in your face, and you do the same thing. Don't challenge me, motherfucker. Let's go. Let's go then. And before you know it, you've hurt, harmed, or killed somebody, and you have no legal justification to have done it, and now you're going to jail, or they have hurt, harmed, or killed you. And neither of those are good. The next option is that most of you would literally say, this ain't my shit, I'm out. Fight, flight, freeze. Those are the three natural reactions to dealing with someone who was literally losing it on you, right? De-escalation is not a natural thing. And your company, whether you work at the lowest level or you work at the highest level, they don't teach it. They don't teach it. They preach it, but they don't teach it. Every company will say, de-escalate. Every company will say, do your absolute best to de-escalate, but they don't teach it. Because it's almost impossible to articulate what de-escalate means in real practice. We understand that it means try and calm things down, but how? What is talking softer or putting your hands in your vest or not making any sudden movements? What does that mean when someone is literally losing their shit and they're screaming and they're shitting all over the floor? It's not reality, okay? So I agree, most security guards don't de-escalate. That's because most of them don't understand what that means, and your companies are not teaching it. We've got former military guys, and I've worked with a lot of them. Many were solid. Sadly, there were some that have an elitist mentality, or those who don't serve. Okay, on those who didn't serve and make a very dangerous and toxic work environment. Yeah, absolutely. Alex says, the key, if you want to prevent that, is hiring guards who are just smart enough to do the basic work, but not clever enough to steal the business, which is also very difficult because now it's so easy to start a business. Alex says you can also tell when you interview people most of the time. Centurion says also, good to see you, brother. Always great to have you here. Always. Someone asked the question, do you think the probabilities of you dying are high in your job? Guys, I've had four guns pulled on me in 4 years. 2 of which were real. Okay. I have a colleague who was a very good young man who was murdered while working on the job in 2022. Okay. Sir Charles. I have responded to homicides. Are the possibilities there? Absolutely. And I'm aware of them, which is why I do so much of this stuff here. It's why I come on and make these videos, guys. I was doing my best to mentor and teach and educate, my young coworker who lost his life a couple of years back. And I don't want to see that for anybody. And I could get got just like anybody else. I don't wish that for myself. I don't wish that for anybody else. I try to do my absolute best to be on the ball and do a good job and keep my head on a swivel. But any of us can get got, okay? So you got to stay focused and do your absolute best to do the right thing, okay? But at the end of the day, it's God's will be done. Someone says, since you're the man in the law, is it legal to have a switchblade in your pocket but only stab someone that's trying to attack you? If you stab someone that's trying to attack you and you articulate that it was justified, that's one thing. The fact that you have it in your pocket is probably going to be irrelevant, because at the moment, this is not legal advice. At the moment that you produce it and use it, it's not going to be in your pocket. The issue would be if you have a switchblade in your pocket, you can't have a concealed knife in your state, or you can't have a knife that rapidly deploys and you're stopped by a police officer, you're searched and they find that. Now you have a concealed weapon, and that is going to be a problem to the best. Centurion says de-escalation has to be taught, trained, and practiced. Absolutely. Alex says, great response, brother. I have over 7 years of security experience, and there's ways to deal with these types of people. There are, and I will be doing a lot of training on that. There's so much stuff to go over, guys. We're not going to be able to hit on tonight. Let's see what Robert says. Hey, can you answer me? What's your question? Oh, yeah. I just answered it. There you go. It was you. All right. I answered the switchblade question. And Kabushi420 says, are you security or police? I am armed security. Guys, you're on my channel. It's called the Security Guard channel. Okay? That's like the 700th time somebody's asked me that. All right, guys, I'm going home. I am off tomorrow. So tonight is dinner, beer, and probably clapping cheeks with my beautiful wife. All right? I hope you guys have a great night. Please, if you like this, like, share, and subscribe. Get other security guards to join our platform. If you guys are looking for education, I will put a link to my report writing class. The clearest way and the easiest way to stay out of trouble, aside from learning de-escalation techniques, is to learn how to articulate why you did what you did. And my report writing software and class is a great way to do that. Also, if you'd like to support what we do, go to bonesandbrewsecuritygear.com. Again, that's bonesandbrewsecuritygear.com. Pick yourself up a super sick security guard based t-shirt, or you can buy my new Trump Fight t-shirt. It's dope. It's on the website.